Okay, in the previous video we ended with this graph, and we said that the ideal situation, so we're looking at external benefits of educational services, and the ideal is that we would want more educational services than what the private sector would be willing to provide. Hence, the government should subsidize educational services. So competitive markets under-provide and underprice goods and services with external benefits. People should pay for the extra benefit, so the price could be a bit higher. And if the government subsidizes it, there will be more educational services provided. So how do we get to the solution? Now, the ideal is to have Pigovian taxes or subsidies. I will just remind you how taxes work. So we have a demand and supply curve, and if we levy a tax on producers, then the supply curve will shift upwards. Now, if the size of the tax is small t per unit of the good provided, let's think of electricity, then the supply curve is the cost curve, so the cost curve will shift upwards. At each quantity on the horizontal axis, the cost will be higher, so the curve shifts up by amount small t. So the difference between the two curves is the size of the tax per unit, namely small t in this case. So we will move to a new equilibrium with the tax. This is now a general idea of how taxes work. I will apply it to chapter 3 just now. So a tax on producers will move the economy to a new equilibrium, which has a higher price and lower quantity. So the tax will do what we want to have done with pollution. So this amount, this is what the producer will put in his pocket. In the original equilibrium, the price, the horizontal dotted line, is the price that consumers pay and that producers receive and put in their pockets. Now consumers pay a higher price and the producers receive that at the till, but then they still have to pay the tax over to the government. So they actually receive that amount of money, and the difference is the tax small t. So the rectangle, yes, so they actually receive less than before for what they used to. They used to get the equilibrium price of starting equilibrium. Now they get less. This rectangle is the total amount of tax. So that's the horizontal axis is the quantity produced in the new equilibrium, and the height of the rectangle is the size of the tax per unit. So if you multiply quantity by tax per unit, then you get the total tax revenue by the government, and we can divide that into two parts. Above the original price line is what consumers pay more than before, so they carry that burden of the tax, and the producers receive less than before, and they carry that burden of the tax. So even though the producers pay the tax, the fact that consumers have to pay more for the goods, they also bear some of the burden of the tax. Now, the Pigovian tax works the same way. So you can see that the supply curve, it's like from E0 to E1 that we had, it's like the supply curve shifting upwards. If we levy a tax of this size, in the new equilibrium, then the quantity will decrease to 0Q1. So that's the new quantity. So the government will receive that rectangle of money. That's not the point here. So the government doesn't tax pollution to get revenue. So that's not part of the Minister of Finance's methods of making money. The goal of the Pigovian taxes is to reduce pollution or to reduce negative externalities. But in the process, the government does collect funds, and the consumers pay so much more for electricity than before, and the producers of electricity receive less than before, so they share the burden of the Pigovian tax. But consumers are willing to share some of it so that they can get cleaner air to live in, and they will be healthier and so on. So, and then the ideal is then that the government should use this money to fight global warming and things like that, and perhaps subsidize clean forms of electricity. They shouldn't just put this in their big pocket. They should utilize the money to create better forms of making electricity, but they don't necessarily always do that. So read the rest of the chapter. You'll see there are interesting stories, for example, on global warming. Global warming is a worldwide consumption and production externality on everyone. Just like you can have a Pigovian tax, you can also have a subsidy. So just work out how you would answer a test question on a Pigovian subsidy in the case of positive consumption externalities, such as on education. Read the summary and work out the questions at the back of the textbook. The next video next week will be on monopolies, which is also very interesting, and much more on Eskom, which is a huge monopoly.